or you can wait until the end where we will have a question and answer period. I hope you learn some new strategies today and get inspired to use Zones Math in your classroom. Let's get started right now. Can you please introduce yourselves? I can see your names when you respond, but if you can respond by telling me what grade you teach, I can see who is online with me today. While I am waiting for your responses to come in, I will introduce myself and my team. I am Olivia Alcoma. I will be presenting for you today. I teach 5th grade in Wyoming, Michigan. I have been teaching for 15 years and have a master's in educational leadership as well as minors in math and earth science. On our team, we also have Christy Gilbert. Christy is National Board Certified, and she is the EL co-teacher for grades 3 through 5 in Wyoming, Michigan. There is Megan Collins. She teaches 1st grade. She is one of our technology experts. We have Sarah Dewey. Sarah is the interventionist in grades 3 through 5 at Godfrey Elementary in Wyoming. She has her master's in reading and is our specialist when we discuss the workshop model. And last but not least, we have Kristen Root. Kristen teaches 3rd grade and has her master's in elementary education. So our fantastic team has worked very hard and has had successful experiences using this framework in the classroom. Here is an overview of what we will cover during today's webinar. We will spend some of our time together reviewing some of the basics of the Zones Math framework, whole group instruction, and planning and managing zones in your classroom. We will also talk more in depth about how to pull small groups and how to conduct one-on-one conferences with students in your classroom. The first topic I want to discuss with you is why we created Zones Math. Perhaps you have heard this before at one of our other presentations, but in case you haven't or need a refresher, I thought it was important to talk about how we started and what the framework actually is. My 4 colleagues and I struggled for years with teaching math. It seemed like we were struggling to meet the needs of all of our learners. We knew we were only reaching the average students while leaving behind the struggling students and boring the excelling students. We also knew there were so many pieces of high quality math instruction that we just couldn't fit into our day. We had also tried guided reading for our literacy instruction and we loved the results. So we started looking for something better for math. For years, we gleaned knowledge from various math gurus such as Lainey Sammons, Joe Baylor, John Vandewaal, Dr. Nikki Newton, and many more. So much of what they said resonated with us, and we knew things could be improved and new ideas integrated with a guided math workshop approach. All of our personal experiences and our research came together to create Zones Math. Using zones, we are creating mathematicians who have daily opportunities to engage in meaningful and authentic projects, games, and lessons using a variety of tools for understanding. We have created a respectful community of learners. One of my personal favorite pieces is that we have integrated all of the common core standards of mathematical practice in daily practice. So if you use this framework with fidelity, you can focus on the content standards and be assured that the practice standards are already covered. Zones also uses effective data-driven instruction using the MTSS model. Zones Math follows the idea of a balanced math model approach to teaching mathematics. This framework follows a workshop model and can be flexibly used with any time frame your schedule allows. Throughout this webinar, I will discuss each piece of this framework with a specific focus on working with small groups and conferencing. So I will start with the first piece of our balanced math model, the whole group instruction. A balanced math model should start with a 15 to 20 minute whole group mini lesson. This portion of the model focuses on any skill that the entire class may need instruction on. This lesson can be working with specific Common Core content strategies, academic vocabulary, adding resources to the resource journal or the interactive notebook. The whole group lesson is not just a teacher-directed lesson. It can be explicit and it can be teacher-directed, but it also can utilize a variety of cooperative learning strategies or kinesthetic learning. Also, during the whole group mini lesson, I mentioned adding resources to the resource journal. You may already use something like this in your teaching and call it an interactive notebook. I have a hard time finding words to describe how essential this tool is for my students. It has all but solved the dreaded learned helplessness and has fostered independence and success in my students, especially while working in the zones rotations. I could go on, but let's get to the reason why you are here today. The next component of our framework is the workshop time where students work in the zones. This piece takes up the majority of time in our model. This time is very flexible and can take anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes, depending on your math schedule. This is often called center work or rotations. We here at Zones Math call them zones. This is where the students work independently on various content area skills and concepts. During this time, when students are working in the zones or center rotations, you will have the time and attention freed up to work with individuals or small groups of students. During this workshop time, the Zones framework has students engaged in specific and focused math content activities. Unlike other workshop models, our zones have been created and based on research and the Common Core mathematical practice standards. These are not just filler or busy work or fluff. As a quick overview, the Memorize zone focuses on creating math fact fluency. The On Your Own zone focuses on procedural independence of math content standards, basically activities to provide you paper pencil proof. Notebook works on explaining the student's math understanding in writing. The Explore zone focuses on conceptual understanding using manipulatives. These activities will have students using manipulatives and a variety of other tools. And Play with someone. This zone has games where students work with a partner to practice math concepts and communicate their mathematical thinking. So, how do you plan for these dynamic tasks so the students stay engaged in learning, so then you are freed up to work with individual students? First, let me say, using a math workshop model takes time to master. The math workshop is where students are engaged in independent, individual, or partner work. The key is to starting the math workshop is establishing rules and routines. Students need to be explicitly taught the goals and expectations of math workshop overall, as well as the goals and expectations of each center students are working in. It is crucial for students to establish a level of independence so that you can pull small groups or push in for individualized conferencing. This takes weeks. Don't rush it, or you will be going backwards, reteaching that muscle memory. Slow and steady wins this race. We have actually developed a 30-day plan that tells you exactly how to accomplish this. Our 30-day launch plan gives you day-by-day lesson plans to help you create this independent environment of math learners. This product is available in our Teachers Pay Teachers store. We are currently working on an updated version of the 30-day launch plan. We are hopeful that we will have it published by the end of September. However, the content of this original version will not be markedly changed. The updated version will have a new look, better visual appeal, and be organized in a more easy-to-use format. But if you would like to get this plan so you can get started with zones for back to school, we do think that this product would be essential. If you do purchase it now, when the update is published, you can download the updated version free of charge from Teachers Pay Teachers. Getting started with using Zones Math Framework is a commitment to student success. Using the framework will change the way you teach, how you look at evidence of learning, and how students feel about math. Planning for zones is a bit of an adjustment as well. I have found that I am not spending more time planning. I am just planning and using my time and resources differently. To help adjust to this initial process, we also have a planning form available on Teachers Pay Teachers. This is a very detailed form created by Christy that will walk you through how to start viewing math instruction in a new way. If you are at all nervous about getting zones started in your classroom, the 30-day plan and the planning form will help support you and feel successful as you launch and implement zones in your classroom. Also, if you are looking for any resources to aid you in planning for the zones rotations, we have a lot of ideas available on our website, www.zonesmath.com. So, now that you have all of your activities planned, your students have been trained in the launch period, the next step is using the knowledge of your students to choose the best way to have them choose their own zone during the workshop time. We suggest that students use a menu because we do not get to every zone each day. You may only get to 1, 2, or 3 zones per day, depending on how much math time you have and how long your mini lesson is. A menu is a way for students to have choice and for you and the students to keep track of which zones they have completed and which zones they still need to complete. We have used several different types of menus, so you can choose which one might work best for you. Also in your classroom, you will have a choice board where students can choose their zone. Again, the zones framework is flexible, so you can choose activities, menus, and choices that work best with your teaching style and your students' needs. So, this sounds like a lot of front loading. It is. However, the rewards are so worth it. Here is a video from a 3rd grade classroom that shows students choosing their zones. As you watch the video, I would like you to notice 2 things. One is that a student is the one checking off the student menu with the student choices. This process is done very independently. Secondly, in the background, you can hear the teacher talking with a group of students. She is already starting with small group instruction. All of the hard work, training, and building stamina has built independence, so the teacher is wasting no time meeting individual student need.
We dropped the 2. You have to carry them. So let me ask you this. How come you have 245 number on the bottom? You have 580.
For an adult, every day.
Okay, 8 plus 4 is what?
13.
12.
5.
1 more would be 13, correct? Okay, we have to carry the 1. 3 plus 2 is 5. Plus 1 more.
The key to creating the activities and managing students for these zones is independence. Since the students are now working independently, that frees you, the teacher, up to focus on student need. I just feel it is very important to note that as with any workshop model, the step to small group work and conferencing does not come right away. For the first 30 days, I launch zones using the 30-day plan. Once I feel my students are trained effectively and have the stamina to sustain independent work, I then add student choice. During the initial week or so of student choice, my main goal during workshop time is ensuring students are working independently and following all of the expectations. Once I am confident that the students can work independently in all of the zones using our expectations, it is then that I start pulling small groups and conferencing with students. This will be our focus for the rest of today's webinar. While the students are working in a workshop, you can concurrently implement the guided math portion of the balanced math framework, working with small groups and conferencing with students. In guided math, teachers will pull small groups to work on specific content that is needed, or to push into the workshop rotations to conference one-on-one with students who have a certain individual need or misconception. When deciding on which students to choose for small groups or what topics to cover in small groups, you go to your student evidence and data. Sarah will be doing a webinar on this specific topic next week, Thursday. So if you are interested in looking at this individualized data and what to do with it, join us next week. When pulling small groups, you meet with students based on their individual need, and then that's also based on their current understanding of the content standard. This allows you to meet with a student daily if necessary, or as little as once a week. The student's understanding will guide the need for this intervention, and it can be individualized for each student. This is honestly where I feel the Zones Math framework really shows its potential and increases my effectiveness as a teacher. The ability to pull small groups allows me to differentiate instruction for each of my students. My students know that they are not able to hide. If they do not understand, they know I will work with them until they do. Also, since I am working with only a few students at a time, I am able to watch each student work through the mathematical process and look for places to intervene. This ability to support student learning leads to student and teacher success. When using your classroom data to pull small groups, we created this small group tracking form. This form is also available on our Teachers Pay Teachers store. This form helps me keep organized for daily lesson planning, as well as have qualitative and quantitative evidence for district student support meetings. This video shows you the process of pulling small groups. Here, Christy has planned out which students she will choose to work with in small groups during the zone's rotations. She has decided to work on the current content standard being taught on your own. She will tell the students she would like to work with to choose on your own. Then she will work with those particular students on their skill need in a small group supported setting instead of independently in a zone.
On your own. Even if you did it yesterday, we're going to do it again together today. So when I call your name, you're going to go move to on your own. Now you'll grab the on your own material and meet me at the front table. I need Naya, Armando, Hamza, Samira, Giovanni, and Jonathan.
Christy already had planned out who she was going to meet with in small groups this day. For this small group, she asked them to choose on your own and meet her at the front table to work in the small group. She will be working on the on your own activity in a small group setting instead of having the students work independently. The rest of the class works independently at their self-selected zone. Christy works with this group of 6 students at the front table. Please notice the independence that the rest of the class has, which allows Christy the attention for the small group. A couple of important notes about pulling small groups. 1, a small group should be small. We like to limit the group to between 4 and 8 students, depending on the content standard we are working on. 2, when working with small groups, students are pulled out of their zones rotation and work with a teacher instead of independently in their zones rotation choice. In the example shown in the movie, Christy chose to have students choose on your own and then worked with the students on that activity in a supported small group setting. We often have the students choose memorize during small groups. With a choice of memorize, students can easily fall back into the independent memorize zone when we feel they have mastered the small group learning objective. Some students may need only 5 minutes with the teacher. Some may need the full 20-minute zones rotation. And lastly, taking notes when pulling small groups is essential data to use when working with student support, MTSS, and reporting progress with parents. This is a Tier 2 intervention taking place in a general education classroom with the classroom teacher. Now, on how to conference one-on-one with students. This is another really great highlight of using the Zones math framework. Conferencing allows you to hit a Tier 2, pushing into a Tier 3 intervention right within the general education classroom setting. During conferencing, you target individualized student need. Using your classroom qualitative and quantitative data, again, you will want to catch Sarah's webinar next week to get more on that topic. You will choose a focused handful of students with targeted needs to conference with. When conferencing, students will choose and move into their zone rotation activity. Conferencing will be different from pulling small groups, as small group work contains 4 to 8 students and students are pulled out of the zones rotations. During conferencing, the teacher will then push into the zone the student has chosen and work with them on that zone activity. This is done one-on-one. During conferencing, I will coach and provide support based on the student's individual need, and I will take notes to document their progress. Conferencing is very important because it allows you to individualize your intervention to focus on more intense remediation and clarify misconceptions. Students also will need to communicate their ideas and thinking through explanation of procedure and process. For organizing my conferencing data, I have tried several methods. I have worked electronically using a Google form, and I have also used a website called Wrapup, which is a great free site, by the way, for disaggregating data. However, I find the most simple and effective method for me is to use sticky notes. I use a template that looks like this and print off a sheet of sticky notes at a time. I am then able to meet with the student, take notes, and then document the notes during my planning time, either in a student portfolio, data tracking sheet, or gradebook application. I have this template available on Teachers Pay Teachers. With this template, you can print off an 8.5 by 11 sheet of copy paper, or use the template to print directly onto a 3 by 3 sticky note. I love it. I would like to show you this video of conferencing during the zones rotation workshop time. Although this student is at the front table, she is working in a zones rotation. Students can have the choice of where they would like to work. I have previously noted who I need to work with on this day and will make sure to conference with this specific set of students. I am able to clear up misconceptions, walk through error analysis, and suggest strategies to strive for independence. Here is the note I was able to jot down for my conference with this student. It was simple and quick, but I now have specific evidence and data of where she stands on content mastery. I now move to my next student. I quickly check my tracking note to refresh my memory on what her teaching goal is for this conference, then work with her on the activity she is currently working on. The important thing to remember here is that conferencing is meant to be short, only about 5 minutes long. Don't belabor the point, rather be direct and then allow the student to continue to work as independently as possible. I take notes as I work so I can plan for her future needs, whether it be another conferencing time or if she will fit with a small group or if she is good to continue independently. For this specific student, I note that her understanding was weak. She needed a lot of direction and a lot of coaching. She did not have a lot of the core understanding expected at this time. I will definitely meet with her again tomorrow to continue working with her mastery of this content. But the great thing is, the zones framework will allow me to do that. I do not do both small groups and conferencing all at once or every day. On a typical math class, my goal is 2 zones rotations. During one zones rotation, I will pull small groups. Then during the second zones rotation, I will conference with 3 or 4 students. Another option is during the first zones rotation, I pull small groups for 10 to 15 minutes, and then I have time to do 1 or 2 student conferences. I then would repeat this same format for the second zones rotation. Therefore, I would get to 2 small groups and 4 student conferences during that math class period. The last component of the balanced math framework is the wrap-up. During the wrap-up, you will summarize the content learning that was the daily lesson objective. This may be teacher directed as a lesson or content recap, or it may be by the students in the form of an exit ticket, a turn and talk, or a check for understanding with the group. So, how do you choose who to pull for small groups, who to conference with, and how do you know individual need? How do you use the data collected during the Zones Math Workshop components in order to teach with an MTSS model in your classroom? Join us for our next webinar using data in Zones Math on Thursday, August 10th, where we will answer these questions to take you to the next level of successfully using the Zones Math framework. Sign up in the chat box with your email address, or look for your invitation via Facebook, Twitter, or email. Using the Zones Math framework is a work in progress. This step to small group work and conferencing does not come right away. For the first 30 days, I launch Zones using the 30-day plan and train my students and build their stamina to sustain the expectations of each Zones rotation independently. Then I add student choice. I use the math workshop time initially to monitor student behavior and ensure that they are meeting the expectations. Once students are independently successful, then I start pulling small groups and conferencing with students. Pace yourself and you will be successful. I wanted to remind you about the resources that I talked about today in our webinar. These are all available in our Teachers Pay Teachers store. I talked to you about the 30-day plan that includes a day-by-day lesson plan for launching Zones in your classroom. I also talked about how I use the small group planning form and the conferencing template. I would never want to forget to mention our starter pack. If you are at all interested in getting Zones up and running in your classroom, this is the product for you. It includes everything that you need to be successful using Zones. In addition to the 30-day plan, the small group and conferencing forms, and lesson planning form, you will also get a Zones Math overview document, Zones graphics to use in your classroom, a student rubric, interactive vocabulary cards, the Memorize mat, sentence frames, and a sample menu. It is a must-have. I would like to open the chat to questions. Please feel free to type in any questions you may have or did not yet get answered in our live chat box, and I will answer them for you. I will stay online as long as I need in order for you to feel confident pulling small groups and conferencing with students. I also want to make sure that you know all of the ways we are here to support you. We want to walk with you through your implementation of the Zones framework to make sure you are successful. Please feel free to reach out to us in the future with any of our media options so that we can support you. We also love to have visitors come to see how Zones looks and runs in our classrooms. So let us know if you would like to visit us. Another option is to have us come and train either your grade level team, instructional coach, or building in using this framework. Please let us know how we can best support you. Thank you again for your time today, and please stay on for a question and answer session. Hello,